I'm not going to cover orally, having to do really with why I have such a burning motivation to do a good job of letters of recommendation. But to start off with, please understand that if you write a boilerplate letter, oh, this kid was a good, hard-working kid, nice to have in class, thank you, you might as well not write anything at all. The competition for seats at elite universities is so fierce that a letter of this nature is just not going to cut it. There are something like 200 applicants qualified applicants per seat at the elite schools today. And one of the ways that we can help them get in is by writing good letters that make them into a three-dimensional person instead of a two-dimensional application. We can, clearly the academic records, extracurriculars tend to be the same for the kids who are applying to these schools. Personal essays, that's something they can control and are also very, very important. And then they should ask teachers who will write them a good recommendation, and not including teachers who will write good ones. I know of at least one case where a teacher wrote a very mediocre recommendation for a kid, and that was very upsetting. I know how important they are for the kid, and then letters of recommendation have had a huge impact on my life. We're going to kind of skip those slides. Yeah, there's a whole bunch where they just...
They have that though. Tell them they have it in their packet.
Yeah, it's in the packet. You have those slides.
Sample.
Yeah, I'm giving you 3 sample letters.
I want to say there's a definite.
There is a definite structure to the letter. The first paragraph, I will tell them how long have I known the student. They want to know that. In what classes have I taught the student? Any other context, club sponsor, extended essay sponsor. They want to know how much contact you've had with the kid and how well you would know them. And then a summary statement about this kid's quality, especially if they have a particularly strong in one area or another area. The second paragraph is a bit of a boilerplate.
I'm sorry, Dan, to interrupt. I'm trying to get this
By all
down.
means.
The first paragraph. Is that in this packet? The thing? Or maybe I'm
Look
in
at the
wrong
first
packet.
paragraph in the sample letter.
I didn't get a sample letter.
Oh, okay. That's why
Okay,
you don't
that's
have.
why I'm lost.
You don't
Well,
have-
that would be a difficulty if you didn't get the sample letter.
Okay, yeah.
I thought I'd gotten them in I guess I thought I gave you a complete packet.
I can also go back to this slide and take a picture of it.
Better.
No. I mean, the sample letters are more important than the PowerPoint.
Okay.
So, and if you compare all 3 of them, you can see that they're structured very similarly. The next paragraph is identical for everybody. And the reason I put it in there is by selling myself and selling my program, I'm selling the kid. So they like to know what I'm teaching, where I teach, and especially how long I've been teaching. What is my attitude towards grading scales, about essay writing as opposed to multiple guest tests? And if you're an IB teacher, then you're teaching within the program. They know what IB is. As time goes on, you can assume that the colleges are keeping track of the letters that you write and whether those kids are successful or not. At this point, I probably could cut that paragraph out because I've been doing it for 25 years. But there's high turnover in those offices among some of the other people who work in there. So, and that's the reason why I have that paragraph in here. If you're not teaching IB, then you still want to talk about your experience and your philosophy and the program that you have and your attitude towards the program. Third and fourth paragraph I have asked the students for a GPA for all. I've exported my gradebook. I tell the GPA for all terms available. I will specify the mark I gave for the grade I gave for an essay, a source-based analysis, an internal assessment. In other words, for every significant assignment I've given, I will put that in that letter. And sometimes I will define what that mark means, because IB uses a numeric scale. So I don't assume that they know what a 15 out of 20 means. So I'll take that from the rubric. If they've written an IA for me, an internal assessment for me, a research paper, I will tell what the topic is and how well they did. If the prescribed title is known, I will address which title they wrote. Again, that's a 1,200 word essay to IB. And again, an assessment of how good that essay was. I've asked them to write prescribed titles in TOK in the junior year, and again, it's a major assignment. So there will be a discussion of that specifically. If I know the extended essay, I will discuss the extended essay, and generally speaking, I will address that student's research skills and writing skills. So that's the third major section. The fifth paragraph, sixth paragraph. If I know about the student's extended essay, that will be a separate paragraph. If I don't know anything about it, then I'll kind of skip over it. But I supervise around 25 per year, so a lot of the kids I have, I know the extended essay in depth.
Can I pop
Yes.
in for a second? For students that are not IB, and you're worried about writing letters of recommendation, and you think, oh, well, they don't have extended essays, that's not the idea. You need to think about an interaction you've had with that child where they initiated their learning, because that's really what extended essay is. It's a time that they thought about something they wanted to learn about, and they went out and did it. So in the scope of your class, through your interactions with the class, did you see that one time, that spark, where they said, you know what, so-and-so, I really am curious, what can I do? And you have that interaction with them where you see that they take charge of their learning. Because ultimately, that's the goal at the college level, is that they are going to be able to learn on their own.
That's also the reason why I will ask them for all of the internal assessment topics, i.e. significant research assignments. And even, I don't know anything about the subject, but when I tell the college what the titles are, it gives the college an idea of the range in depth intellectually that student has. So if it's not an IB student, you want to do the same thing by touching upon the creative things that are part of your course. I will ask them, I will tell them which HL, and which higher level and which are standard level examinations. And I will, because I ask the students for their AP scores, I try to extrapolate what a predicted mark for the IB diploma is. So for example, if they get a 3 in AP US, I'm going to predict a 5 in IB HL history, because it usually goes up about 2 points because of the different grading scale. And I may be wrong, but still it gives them an idea of the overall strength of the kid. The next paragraph has to do with extracurricular activities, sports that they're engaged in, if they had a job, service and leadership activities that they've done, especially if they've had a particularly good CAS project. So the non-academic things that for many of the kids are the most important part of high school. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that students do not come here to go to my history class. They come to be with Mary Morrow and Tracy Barrow and the band and the highlights. And I'm pretty low on the totem pole. I try to encapsulate in a summary the student's maturity and readiness for university, academically, socially, and personally. Because they don't want to admit a student who won't be successful. And that includes, are they socially and emotionally ready for university life? Okay, preparing. At the end of the year, I export my gradebook. I create it into an Excel file. That's why I can look up and discuss specific assignments very specifically. It's just a question of foresight. Increasingly, I've begun to create a separate file where I distill out the significant assignments, and I try to put it in a single file because I think I forgot how many I wrote last year, but it gets to be quite a few, and it's tedious to go through all 4 terms of a single grade book. I ask the students to provide me with an electronic copy of their resume, their counselor survey, their AP and IB test scores, any IA titles, any EE titles, the prescribed title if they know. I send that via ManageBack if you're not an IB student. If you're using Edmodo or something similar, send that out to them and then have them give it to you as an electronic copy. If you're like me, if they give me a hard copy, I'll lose it. But if they give me an electronic copy, I'll create a separate file on my computer and I'll have it forever and ever and ever and ever. You write a first draft. It usually takes me a couple of hours to write a first draft. And then I'll leave it alone for a day, at least a day. All good writing is a matter of revision. And so the second time I sit down at it, I may have thought I wrote one tremendous passage, and I'll look at it the next day and realize, you know, I need to change this, and I need to change that, change the other thing. So we tell the kids ourselves, revise, revise, revise. I try to do the same thing. Run spell check. You're not only representing the student, you're representing the school, you're representing yourself. And so sending off a letter of recommendation to an elite school and having spelling errors in it is not going to create a good impression. Now, the first big wave is going to be due date November 1st, and that's getting to be a bigger and bigger wave. And that's a real problem. Then there'll be a lull until January 1st usually. So one of the things I end up doing over Christmas break are a lot of letters of recommendation. There will be a steady demand for letters for scholarships through the rest of the year, and oftentimes you get very little warning. So I will save my recommendations from my home onto my school computer. I also will print copies of the letterhead on my printer at home, which is a color printer, because sometimes they have to have a hard copy. And there's only, as far as I know, there's only one color printer in this school. Well, if I'm going to be sending a hard copy out, I want it to look good. I want it to look professional.
Dan, I have a color printer you can use.
Okay, that makes 2 in the school. But I will keep I keep it in my room so that a kid comes to me at the last minute. All I have to do is pull that out, put it in my printer, and open my file, boom, and it's done. Now, I know that some of you, you're thinking to yourself, if the kid gives me almost no warning, that's just too bad. And most of the time I would agree. But there are circumstances that can really surprise us, and Anna, you're going to remember one. When you came to me one day crying about a young man who, there were weird home situation, and he didn't want anybody to know about it. So Anna only found out very, very late in the process, but it threatened whether he was going to go to school, go to university or not, period. And he's one of our best students. And,
He was the valedictorian that year. He was the valedictorian.
So I didn't remember that much.
Yeah.
And the thing is that we needed hard copies in a real big hurry. And I am so glad that because I had set these things up, it was a case of just pulling the paper down, change the heading, push the button, bam, 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 bam. And I remember Anna said to me at the end, "You've got it down to a science." It's really about preparation. It's really about preparation. And especially when you have a kid like this, because he went to college. Yeah, no, I mean, this was a kid who was sleeping on a couch every day. What we do here, teaching, is an extension of child rearing. And it can sometimes be sloppy and messy and frustrating, but we're really in the business of trying to make young people's lives better. And so if we can just take a few things, precautions to be well organized, we can answer those needs. And as you'll see if you read the earlier passages, my life would be dramatically different if somebody had not taken the extra steps for me. And so it's kind of a passion for me. Yes?
I think that you should do the speech during one of our faculty meetings.
I agree.
I should be the...
You should be the
Talk
one
during
saying the
faculty
speech.
meetings
Everything
instead
you're
of
saying to
UTD.
us today, I think you should do it on one of our faculty meetings.
I agree.
I think some people need inspiration.
More like compassion.
As long
To
as...
remember why they're teaching.
As long as I'm not up there as
Yeah.
UTD steward,
No. You be up there as you.
we need a new steward, but if nominated, I will not run, and if elected, I will not serve.
I think everybody should ask Alicia to do it. I think she'd be good at it. Just don't tell her that I said that.
I think she'd be great.
I think she'd be great at it.
No comment.
Oh, that could be a giveaway.
Dan,
You need to edit.
don't forget you want to
That
say
wasn't
something
me,
about
Alicia.
touching on the obstacles or the hardships.
Oh, yeah, how did I leave that one out?
I don't know, but
As you see with one of the letters, in particular, this girl had unusual obstacles to overcome. And I knew about it. You don't always, but I put that as part of the letter. And the universities want to see that as well, especially because if the counselor has referred to it, the classroom teachers referred to it, the kid may have referred to it, it encourages them to believe, yeah, this really is the case. But in the bottom line, it's making someone's life better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Dan, I just have a thing, you put in here the mother's illness.
just so you know, is to like, sort of, Dan gave you like the focus of what it should look like. And then Diana and I have different perspectives. She's going to kind of talk to you a little bit about sort of the counselor perspective, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about like the college admissions officer perspective, CAP/college admissions, because I think the idea is between the actual teacher and the two of us, you'll get an idea and a sense of what the total thing should be like. So that's kind of what we're hoping.
I think, and it's something that we all really know, and it's just taking it to the next tier. It's a team effort. It's definitely not you in isolation. The counselor letter and the teacher letter are meant to sort of validate each other and give that admissions officer a full picture of the kid. And that's why they really need to reflect like the personal conflicts that a kid has. It's good that they both discuss that, because then it's validating each other. But it's also important to make sure that as the teacher, and my favorite little catchphrase is to think of micro. You are in the classroom, how the child learns, how the child thinks, how they participate, how they are a leader in class, what their work ethic is. The counselor tends to be more of that global perspective, the macro of what their whole situation, what their whole curriculum looks like, what they're involved in outside of school as well as inside of school. But as much as I would like to say how Johnny is in class, I can never really validate that. That's why it's really up to the teacher to give that perspective. I can talk about the challenges that kid has. I can talk about the fact that transportation may have been an issue. I can talk about illnesses, personal health, parental health. So really, I think my message right now is to make sure that when you do write your letters, it's a good idea to touch base with the counselor. Have a powwow. this is what the kid brought me, this is what I'm thinking about writing, is there anything else that I should add in here? Because the kid is developing a packet, and that packet is what the colleges are going to use to make the determination. It's the letters, it's the essays, and it's the grades and scores. And really, grades and scores, as much as they fight for them, they're a dime a dozen. The only thing that really sets that kid apart is going to be what you say about them and then their own essays. So, you know, a lot of the, you know, Dan is really good in kind of telling you the breakdown of what he does in paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm a little more fluid in that I don't want to kind of set myself that type of format, but I do try to always start off with a context. Every kid, and some of them are hard, but every kid has a challenge. Whether they were deathly mortified of talking in front of class the first day, or they couldn't sit still, and because of that their handwriting was, you know, something that they had to overcome to be at the place that they're at now. And you saw that transformation in your class, and that's what you really need to find a way to give life to. Do provide that insight to their character, to their potential to thrive, because you know them way better than a counselor does. Yes, we know their highs and lows, but we don't know their day-to-day grind. And so that's really what you really need to tap into and make sure you provide to them. In regards to the actual writing, try to maintain that objective tone. Liz and I were talking about this. You know, we dearly care about these kids, and we do tend to go overboard sometimes in our letters. But for example, making it too flowery, too many adjectives, then you lose that credibility as well. So don't think that you have to be a super fancy writer, or that you have to use very big words, or have these like really complicated sentences. Just be straight to the point in giving out how you perceive this child and what your thoughts are. Too subjective. And Liz and I have also talked about it's okay to have somebody else read your letters if you're afraid you're kind of dancing on that line. Don't forget that you're not alone. The thing that drives all of this is the deadlines. That's the real big problem, is that we all try to make the deadlines for the kids, which is why one of the big things we've set into their minds, and she started it, and for example, for the kids that I work with, I'm going to be reiterating, is they have to be ahead. They have to have all their stuff ready to turn into you. You shouldn't have to really ask them for too much because they have everything. So demand it of them. Say, you want me to write, I want to write a letter for you, but I need you to provide X, Y, Z to me. And don't say, oh, I don't want to give you more. No, if their college application, they need to give you that onus. As counselors, we generally require them to give us a 15-day warning. So if you want to, as long as you tell the kids ahead of time, they're very good at following that. So let them know, these are my structures. I need 15 days in advance. I need your resume. I need any academics that you've done outside of school. Get me this in a file or however you like it, and I'll make it happen for you. Yes, there are always exceptions. There are always that last-minute scholarship, and yes, we go out of our way. But generally, the kids, if they know you have a way or procedure of doing something, they're very happy to comply with it. I kind of said that already. And I kind of said that. Present voice, active verbs. No, passive voice is really kind of blah to read. Nobody likes to read passive voice. Those are be statements, like, you know, because, da-da-da-da-da-da, where you're separating kind of like the kid from what they did by having all the stuff in the middle. Just think subject verb, you know, the kid and what they did, right? Don't make it too complicated. Don't list things. This kid is in NHS, IBHS, FBLA, da-da-da. So what? I would rather hear a sentence of, while in IBHS, this student helped run a drive for toothbrushes to send to Columbia, rather than a long list of 10 clubs that mean nothing. So think about how you're going to present what they've done. Think about, and what I mean by red flags there, let's say you know a kid, you're writing a letter for a kid and the kid got in trouble once. Do you want to necessarily put the kid out there and saying that he got in trouble? No. definitely not. But if you know it's already part of something that they're turning in, like let's say in their own personal essay, they're talking about the time that they got arrested, and how they turned around and they did it, then of course you want to say how much of a difference that kid has become in being a mentor to others. Like, make sure you validate their turnaround, because again, everybody makes a mistake. So if it's in and it's part of their packet, don't hide it, address it front on, because it's worse if you don't. Summary again, make sure when you're asked to write a letter, ask them for whatever it is that you want, tell them how much time you need. Make sure you find their story. Make sure you sandwich your letter between their story. And then get it in by the deadline. If you need help and you want me to look at your letters, I'm always happy to do that. Somehow, some way, I'll give you feedback. Ms. Lascano's in the office, Ms. Driver's in the office. There's a whole bunch of people who are all willing and very happy to look at any letters you may have. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Danielle. We're a team, and I'm going to kind of give you the college admissions perspective, and I feel qualified to do that because I go to all these conferences and I actually talk one-on-one with admissions officers. Plus, we have 60 to 70 colleges that come on campus every fall, and that's the business that I'm in. That's what I do. I chat with them. I find out what they feel about our letters and about letters in general, and I always try to get it out of them what they're about. And I also go to workshops that talk about teacher recommendation letters and counselor recommendation letters. So basically, again, as Dinah said, make sure that they give you something to base the letter on. Even if you think you know a kid, have them give you something, because I find that it's really important not only to have something on paper, but also talk to the kid and say, what do you want the college to know about you academically? What do you think I can offer you in this letter? And what do you think this letter should be about? Obviously, ultimately, it's your letter. You're going to make the decision. But bring the child into the process. I always find that so, so helpful. Highlight specific classroom performance. As Dan said, it's really important to contextualize these letters. Don't just talk about the kid in the abstract. They don't care. They want to see in IB theater, what are they doing? In math, how do they think? Are they better at proofs? Are they better at algorithms? How does that child think? Because they're really trying to distinguish Johnny from Susie. And if Johnny and Susie both took IB math, they want to know what the difference is between Johnny and Susie. So that's really important. Again, put a student's work in perspective and explain your course. Now, Dan is really good at this, because you'll see in the letters when you have a chance to read them, what Dan does is he basically says, look, this is who I am, and this is what I teach, and this is how I grade, and these are my standards. And then, in context of that, this is how this child compares, right? And so it really does give you a platform to, show the child's growth or the child's abilities or the child's analytical skills. And so I think it's really important to put that in. However, on the same page, this letter is not about you. So it's fine to establish who you are and what you teach and your standards, but don't go further than that. Don't talk about yourself in this letter. Frankly, they don't care. It's all about the kid. They want the focus to be on the kid. So it's good to set up, who you are and you're representing the school and where the kid is, but it can't be about you. Deadlines. I cannot express enough how important deadlines are. Last year we had a teacher who had a problem with getting into the Common App. She never told me. She never told the child. The child applied to the school thinking everything was fine. Wasn't fine. Now, ultimately, that's the child's fault, because I tell all the seniors it's their responsibility. If they ask you for a letter of recommendation, it's up to them to make sure they follow up and say, Mr. Dunn, did you have a chance to do my letter or whatever? But in this case, the teacher, I think, also could have reached out to the child and said, I'm having a problem here. Let's figure this out. So please, please, please meet your deadlines. And also, if you can do it the day before, try to do that, because sometimes the website does not cooperate, and so you don't want to be doing it at the last moment. Also, as Diana said, don't be verbose. Short and sweet and simple and to the point and very, very specific is what they're asking for. They don't need a 4-page thing. Show, don't tell. We tell our kids that. We should do the same. No stringed adjectives, that kind of thing. Diana went over that as well. And then number 9 is my pet peeve. This is my huge pet peeve. If a child asks you to write a letter of recommendation and you cannot be positive in full about that child, say no. I would rather you say no than to give that child a qualified recommendation letter. They don't need a qualified recommendation letter from you. They can get a 100% positive letter from someone else. And that is what your role is to help this child to get into college. If you qualify it, the child they will not see that as a positive letter. So be very, very careful it's a very difficult task and it's a very fine line because not every letter you write can be, this child is the best child I've ever seen. But there is a way to say that the child is extremely qualified and to focus on what that child does well without comparing that child to other kids so that it sounds like that child is not as good as other kids. So if you are writing a letter for someone that you know is not the best in your class, but your job is to find what that child's strength is and talk about that child's strength. And if you really believe that it's a strength of that child, then the letter will be positive. But, I can't tell you how many times at these conferences I have these admissions officers tell me, wow, some of these letters you would not believe. They think they're positive, but in there it's a qualifying word, it's a backhanded compliment, it's a all in all, this kid is okay, or overall, I would say. It's little words that just, bam, hit that kid and make that admissions officer have a doubt about that child. So, and it is my pet peeve because I feel that, like as Diana said, the things that distinguish them are the essay, the teacher rec, and the counselor rec. There's going to be 1 million kids with a 4.0 and a 2300 on the SAT. So we have an obligation, I feel, to help these kids and to really, really dig deep and find out what they're good at and talk about that. That's my huge pet peeve. I don't like negative. Jim.
I understand the spirit of what you're saying, and I agree with it in the spirit. There's something I do that seems to violate that, but I don't think does,
Okay.
which is, and the Navajo, when they weave rugs, they always make a tiny mistake in one corner because otherwise it would be affronting the gods. I always include a small quirk. It's in effect a criticism, but one that will be readily dismissed because that sells the rest of it. If I only say good things about them, they know I'm lying. They know what everybody is trying to do. So I always include, I think of what could I phrase that seems at first glance as a negative, but really
Give an
quirk.
example.
Yeah.
Quirk is
Okay.
the key word there.
So-and-so is a very enthusiastic and active participant. He often carries the discussion. Sometimes he's so excited, he talks too fast and you have to slow him down.
Right,
That's the kind of thing.
That's fine.
It
That's
means it's a
fine.
real person.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say paint the child unrealistically.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean is that some of the letters I've seen are really comparing the child to the rest of the class.
Yeah,
And
no, I
therefore the child seems not as qualified as some other kids. That's not good. But in a comparison with himself, if you're going to say, this is, like he needs to be slowed down a little bit, or, the child used to do this and now has grown and no longer does this, that's fine. But I think it always has to be an uptick. It always has to end on a positive. It always has to be ultimately about the kid's strengths. And I think sometimes we get lost in how, if a kid is making you sort of annoying you in class or something and you've agreed to do the letter, but just depends on sort of your emotional feeling at that day. That's why what Dan says is critical. You got to write the letter, put it down, and come back to it because you may feel differently the next day.
No, the opposite could also be true though. You know how you said that they know that the kids that come from our school are good and they're going to take them. I just think that sometimes teachers feel bad saying no. And
Right,
the
that's
opposite
true.
could
You
be
have to
too,
learn
but
to say no.
there's like a 1%, just a 1% of a kid that really doesn't deserve the letter.
Right, but you have to learn to say no.
But then you say, I'm not the right
Okay.
person
You
to
just
write
say,
your letter.
I'm just not the right person to write your letters, you should probably think about asking
I've
someone
done
else.
that because sometimes.
We just have to do it, we have to. I'd rather you do that than write a negative letter about a kid and tank a
Not
kid.
doing the kid.
No.
You can't tank the kid, you
If I
just
could
can't.
share just one anecdote, it's like a quirk that's remained with me for quite a long time. This was back during the Lewinsky